my daughter came home and said, I want to marry somebody, and she said, he's a Sikh, I'd be happy.
About society and what does society say, and you've got to love yourself from within. Where is that going to start? It's going to start from your clothes.
In this desire to want to be independent or different, you know, what we get is a lot of young people thinking, oh, thanks very much for that, now I'm going to go off and do my own thing.
Welcome to Kaurs Corner. I'm Baljeet Kaur. Joining me today, we have on the far right Rajpal Kaur, India Kaur, Sarabjit Kaur and Preet Kaur. So ladies, today I wanted to just talk about weddings, because we have a family wedding coming up, and the amount of expense going into this wedding is shocking really. So it's quite flabbergasted by how much is actually being spent and what it's being spent on, and whether we can spend that money elsewhere as opposed to one day. What are your thoughts?
See, I don't have an issue with it. I think originally I did have an issue because I was like, why do you need to spend so much money? It's all about showing off in a way, because if somebody's had, I don't know, a wedding in a marquee, then everybody wants to have a wedding in a marquee and it's following the Joneses. But then looking at it from the people that are getting married on the day, it's their special day, and who are we to take the right off them?
But it's not though, is it? It's more about the families and the communities. It's never really about the couple, because there's a very much of a me culture going on at the moment. It's your special day, it's all about you. But do you not think that's like clever advertising?
I don't think so, because at the end of the day, when we got married, it was very much about the family, because your parents went off, they did all the planning, you know, they decided whether you were going to have a party or not. They did the Gurdwara booking, they did everything. They were the ones that, you know, you had your Vuchulla, and that was very much a family wedding. Whereas nowadays, it's the kids will come up to you and they'll say, no, we've decided we're going to do, this is what we want to do. We want to go to you know, we want a party. This is how we want it. This is the dress theme that we want. This is what we want. It is very much about the couple. I don't think that families actually get involved as much as they used to, say 20 years ago.
I mean, well, 20 years ago, men went to the pub and women cooked at home. So it's changed dramatically since then. But in terms of the day, it's more about the family and bringing the communities together.
I don't think it is.
I think there's that the expectations that existed are still there in that we still invite 400 to 500 people. I don't think we really think through properly as to whether we should just invite immediate family, because actually in today's age we're facing austerity. It's much harder to get a property. You've got to be 30 now to get on the property ladder. And I think, you know, some of that money can go towards the couple buying a house, for example.
Yeah, I agree.
And actually maybe still having a wedding that is, you know, what they want, but maybe reduce the numbers. And I think some of our community, we don't think about it like that. No, we think it's you know, it's for everybody.
And aren't we taking the emphasis away from, I think, with the kharcha, everything that you're doing with the wedding today, as opposed to, you know, when we got married, Sabji, aren't people taking the emphasis and focus away from actual meaning of the Anand Karaj and what you're actually doing? And it also when you go to the Gurdwara, you notice, ਗ੍ਰੰਥੀ ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹਨਾ ਜਲਦੀ ਛੇਤੀ ਛੇਤੀ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ ਹਨਾ ਸਪੀਚਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਹੋਲ ਬੁੱਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੋਲ ਤੇ ਜਾਣਾ
It's more material now.
But the thing is, if you think about it, we're talking about a topic that is Ananda Garage, which is different to a wedding, and the kids of today don't understand that Ananda Garage is this and this is what it means. To them, it's a wedding.
But
So the two...
Yeah, but it's part of the wedding though, it's the same.
No, I don't think
The
it
Nanda
is.
Garage is the traditional and the religious part of the ceremony, which is what
don't
weddings
think so.
historically were. They're always the religion and the tradition, whereas now it's more material.
And the tradition was that you ਅੱਗੇ 11 ਬੰਦੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀ for a janaza back in the days, and
But that was because it was it was an Ananda Garage. Now it is not an Ananda Garage. It is a For the kids, do they understand what they're doing? No, they don't.
No.
Do they understand what the lama mean? No, they don't. All they think is, okay, fine, I've got to get up in the morning, got to wear a fantastic outfit,
gotta look good.
got to go to
It's
the
just a
Gurdwara,
given.
I'm going to go around
Yeah.
the Guru Granth
I
Sahib
think
Ji,
it's
and that's it.
I think one thing
Do you
that's
know what I mean?
quite positive and it's been quite controversial is that the Jathedar of Akal Takht has, you know, talked about if you're going to get married in a Gurdwara, then you have to have Kaur and sing in your name. And I think that's really good because the onus should be on the Gurdwaras to actually explain what the lava means to the couple.
But I don't think that's what we're talking about. I think here we're talking about wedding and expenses, and I think you can go down that road of you know what's right and what's wrong, and I don't think that's what you were talking about. It's about the expense,
The kharcha,
and I think the kharcha has increased from
It has.
It's just a given though,
from
isn't it?
before,
It
because
has
now, like I said, there is. You go to any wedding, you see probably about 30-40 people at the Gurdwara, but the wedding hall is packed.
It's a business,
You
though, isn't
know,
it?
Yeah.
Of course it is.
The wedding industry is worth 300 million.
But there's more and
in
more
the
things
UK.
being added to it in,
Yeah.
in the olden days.
But I think
it
it's-
was just a
Do you think
simple
it's
affair.
relative to the families in terms of how much money they have?
Sometimes
in
it
terms
is.
of what they want to spend.
I don't think
But
it is.
because
No, it
sometimes
is.
it's not, because the families
it.
don't have the money, but they feel under
They
pressure,
feel under pressure.
Yeah.
to comply with, you know, what the boys' side of the family
It's expected,
are
though, isn't it?
expecting.
No, but
If there's
the
a wedding,
They might
it's
not have
expected. You're
that
going to have a
kind of
3-day
money
event.
available, but because you have to live up, as you say, like, you know, be with the Joneses kind of thing, that people are doing it, aren't they?
But
They're
the
just splashing
youngsters are
out,
saying
whether
it
they've
to
got
you.
the money or not.
It doesn't matter whether you've got the money or not, because if you talk to a lot of the youth today, they'll say, "We're not asking you to pay for our wedding. For them, a wedding is not an ananda garage. For them, the wedding is a party.
Yeah.
For them, it's about
The material.
we've got to have a fantastic day. You had that DJ, we had that caterer, you had that fountain. We want this.
Yeah.
That's all
I
it's
think
about.
if it's about the couple and it's the couple's choice that this is what they want to do, this is how much they want to spend, it's their day, that's great. I think there's no problem with that at all. If it's, well, we've got to do this because flanin agana, demgrin agana, we haven't done this and we haven't invited so-and-so, that becomes a different issue altogether. If it is the kid's choice and if they can afford it, if, like you say, a lot of them are paying for their own big day now, which I think is
As
commendable.
parents, should they not then intervene and say, well, actually, I think you're spending too much? For example,
yeah,
where somebody says they want to have a helicopter instead of, you know, I don't know, a limousine.
Sometimes it's
Let me throw it
aspirational,
back
though.
to you. Let me throw it back to you. Your daughter comes home to you and she says to you, Mum, I found somebody and I want to get married. And this is how I want to get married. Are you realistically, after you've said, oh, but darling, I don't think you should spend this amount of money,
Yeah.
you know your child and you know she's not going to listen, she's made up her mind. What can you do as a parent, apart from explain to them,
Yeah.
you know, they're still going to go ahead and do that anyway. You
No,
really
you're right,
can't
they
do
will.
anything,
No,
can
no, you're right, and I wouldn't be able to, but I think you have to try. You have to try and explain and keep it in perspective and explain to them, you know, how much you're spending and whether really, do you want to spend that maybe? Because some children are happy when they listen to their parents, when they tell them that why don't you save that money and, you know, put a deposit down on a house or buy a nice car.
But then that comes down to the
Yeah, I
parents
think
and
it's
the
individual.
upbringing,
Yes.
isn't it?
I don't
It's
even
like, I
think it's about that. I think
It's aspirational as well, though.
realistically, It's a
There is,
material
yeah.
world today.
It is a material world. There is a lot of
Youngsters
pressure.
today are not gonna. You can sit there and you can say to youngsters, "Get a house. We're helping you." Bottom line, they will throw back to you. It's our special
Not
day.
necessarily.
Today's the
Not
only
Not
day.
necessarily.
chosen to just keep it low key.
You see,
Put that
you
in a
listen to
starter
a
home.
22, 23-year-old, 25-year-old, 26-year-old, they will say to you, this is what we want to do, this is how we want our wedding, this is what we thought about it, and then you end up with friction in the family. So do you do what the child wants for their happiness because you want the day to go through smoothly, or do you just think, you know what, I'm going to have my way, and I don't care what you say, and I'm going to put my foot down.
Depends
And
who's
I
paying
think one
for
of the
it.
things that we haven't done as a community is look at actually how the Anand Garage sits in terms of its place, in terms of the whole wedding being the most important thing. I think we as a community, we haven't thought about actually, should we do an Anand Garage like on a Saturday? Do we need all this Manya stuff, you know, and have that day solely for that? And if people want to do a party or whatever, they can do another day. But actually then the focus becomes on actually what the marriage is, and anything else is actually then, I think we haven't really sat, I think it's a really good discussion today, because I think we don't think about the things that we've been doing all along, what they
We never
actually
question
mean.
it because it's a
Yeah.
given. Everything's
Yeah,
just
that's
given.
right.
There's
But a lot of that's because of the glamour of Bollywood
Yeah.
than the UK British celebrity culture.
That's right.
And we've got more increased spending now.
And
So
there's
a lot
more
of that
increased
filters
services. It's like you've got things like chocolate fountains now
Yeah.
and kids
Sculptures.
entertainers
Bollywood,
and
you
that
see,
kind of stuff.
it's wonderful to explain Bollywood. I don't think it is Bollywood at all. I think, at the end of the day, let's be real, it is about the way that the world has changed. The youth of today
But that's
have
influenced
got...
it somewhere, though.
yeah, but you can't
That
put it
influence-
down on Bollywood, because I don't think
That's
that the
one-
youth... I don't think that the youth of today are that influenced or are that influenced by Bollywood. I think they're influenced by a materialistic world which is outside
But where
of
does that come
Bollywood.
from?
That comes from the societal view. There's more money, kids are more vocal, they've got jobs, they want to spend their money where they want to spend them. I think as parents, we have allowed the children to spend the money where they want to spend them. When we got married, or when we were
We didn't have a
growing
choice.
up, we
It
didn't
was,
have it.
this
no.
is it. This is how it's going to be done.
Yeah,
there you
but then
go.
you showed you know, you gave your money to your mother-in-laws, or
Yeah.
you showed them the payslip, and it was contribution towards the house. What we've said is we don't want our children to have to necessarily go through that
Yeah.
that phase.
Yeah.
And you know, it's okay to blame X, Y, and Z. It's not. It's our fault as this generation. Who have brought up children, we've given them options to do things that are different to what we did, because we don't want we didn't want our kids to go through the oppression that we've gone through
So,
necessarily.
taking that into account and what you just said earlier, why can't we then have, why don't we have the right then to dictate to our children that you can't spend that much, especially if we as parents are paying for that
Because
wedding?
you've not
Because if
dictated on
they're
other
paying for it,
things.
no, but if they're paying for it, it's different. But if we're paying for the wedding, why can't you
Then you
say,
should
"Well,
have
that's
a-
not
you
fair."
should.
You're
Then
not
you should
having
have a
it.
voice.
Look,
I don't even think it's that complex. I don't think young people have thought about it on that level. I think actually young people go to weddings, they see how it's done,
And
they
they
have an
think it's a norm.
expectation that actually this is how it's done, this is how I'm going to do
One
mine, but I
upmanship,
might add one
yeah.
or two
Yeah.
different
Exactly.
things and just be a little bit
And that's
different.
it. Make it-
I don't think anyone's actually sat down as a community or with young people to say actually how would you do it differently? You know, what could you change? Yes, we are influenced by materialistic, whether it's Western or Eastern Bollywood. Bollywood is everywhere. You know, it's big in terms of the Western market, so naturally our community are very influenced because of the music, you know, and some of the attire that, you know, that comes out from Bollywood. So there is that influence. But I just think we need to get young people to start actually taking some responsibility. Our kids are quite intelligent, you know, they're
Then
going
that's
to
up to us.
university.
That's up to us to educate
Influence,
them, influence
yeah.
them, and show them other options. You know, like I mean, I know this isn't related, but there's a given now that all kids should go to university. I'm thinking, well, I've given my son the other options: university, apprenticeships, etc., etc. So that's the same with the wedding. I think it's like, yes, spend on the wedding. It is your big day, and that's not just our culture. It's in every culture.
Yeah.
A girl's always brought up thinking, oh, my big day, my
Yeah.
prince, my this, my that, and I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that. So it's just saying, it's just changing the whole mindset of, I'd say particularly our girls, saying that yes, you can have it this way, you can have your big day, but then how about
'Cause it is
other
the
things?
girls, it's always targeted towards the girls.
Investing in
It is,
property
yeah.
or buying your starter home, or I know a lot of young couples who just actually don't like this whole hoo-ha and go abroad
Yeah.
Yeah.
and do a registry ceremony and that's it, and come back and you know, and they're thinking that's great too. It is predominantly, I'd say, down to the couple, but then we as parents, we as
I think-
as
Yeah,
advisors
but I
should
think
be
also
showing them
it
other
depends
options.
on the family culture itself and how you raise, because you do have a lot of children, Bursek children, who choose not to have a party
Yeah.
simply because
Yeah.
of, you know,
Their values, yeah.
values,
Yeah.
principles, how they're raised, who they're raised around, and social sort of peers, and you know, so they decide not to have the party.
First thing that happens is it's equality.
Yeah.
You're not giving a daughter into that side, it's equality.
Yeah.
So because the mindset's changed now, it's okay for us to say, oh, it's down to us, but we've allowed that mindset to change, because now what do mothers do? They teach their daughters to become independent.
Yeah.
You know, get yourself a job, because what's the first thing that you say to your child? Make sure you have got an education, make sure you've got a job,
Yeah.
so that you can be financially
You've got
self-sufficient.
stability, that's
And we don't teach our children. I don't have a daughter, so I know that we don't teach. I've not seen it in the girls that I've met of today. This is how you are going to be in your in-laws' house. There isn't that teaching.
Yeah.
The focus is always on education, employment, financial stability, and therefore, when they are going to get married, we're going to do what we want to do, and that is down to us.
I don't
but those
know,
marriages don't last.
I don't agree.
I don't
because
agree with
think
that
there's
either.
a lot of girls, I mean, I'm just talking about my family, where actually there is that
Yeah.
aspect of the
Yeah.
in-laws. The respect of family comes first, you know, that is like, the independence bit comes way after.
Way after.
Because even today, my mum, you know, if my sister's anything, that she'll say, it's your mother-in-law, it's your family,
Yeah.
I don't want to
Your age. I'm
No,
talking
I've
about
got
21,
cousins,
22, 23-year-olds.
But I've got cousins
And
who are that age, and coming from my family, they are taught, Gan jacket and with the Gani Babi.
Yeah.
You are
I think
taught
it is
Okay,
down to the
but
family. We are
equally,
taught
like
that.
they're told from you, I work with lots of 22, 23, 24-year-olds where the parents are saying, no, it is equality. I've been to weddings, family weddings or friends' weddings, where they've said, the boys' side and the girls' side have actually said, no, you will pay half towards this.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
one thing we haven't mentioned is that most families now, where couples are getting married, they've already agreed to pay half.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
it is pretty much a
50-50
partnership.
But it never used to be.
It never
because
used to be,
be.
no,
It
but
always
then
used to
times
be
have
down to
changed.
the girls'
Yeah.
side,
Yeah.
and therefore the kharcha was always
That's right.
So where has that
reduced.
change come from?
But
Where
that's
has
a
that
good
come
thing,
from?
I think.
Yeah, it's a
Is
positive.
that-
That's very
Is that the
positive.
kids, or is that the parents? Is that a...
I think
more
it's
the
just
young
the rising
society.
costs. It's how we've moved on.
Yeah.
Times have changed.
So then again, if we can bring those changes about,
And
then there's...
financially, I think, as you've just said, girls are probably just as successful now as the men are.
Look, you have to put it into perspective, like the wedding day is one day and you're going to stay married for a long, long time.
But I don't think they think about that because the thing that is drummed in every day, the thing that's drummed in now, it's our special day.
The me culture, it's very much the me
There is
culture.
that, but then you do get relationships that don't last more
Exactly.
than a year afterwards, and then you hear the parents in our you know,
And sometimes it's six figures.
so you do get that as well.
But
don't
then, you know, when you say that to the children, they say, yeah, but it's not going to happen to us.
it's not going to happen to me, because you don't expect it to be
Yeah.
you.
Do you know what I mean?
It's going
They
to happen to.
automatically, they'll say, oh, but it's not going to happen. And then when you say, well, what if it does? Oh, well, if we're going to spend the money, we're going to spend the money. It is that culture, and that culture is a societal change, you know.
But there's that kind of culture that Punjabis kind of do it, you know, big, and
Big,
you know, they want to spend the
extravagant,
money,
yeah.
and they're extravagant, and it's got to have, you know, all of that sort of
Yeah.
stuff, and that's a real big culture pressure.
But it's not just
Is
us,
this-
other
is this-
cultures have the same pressure as well.
Is this not where we've got to somehow empower our children to think for themselves and not be so concerned about keeping up with the Joneses,
But I
doing
think-
what's best for them?
But I think if we're talking about that, then subject, you mentioned that the Ananda Garage is a separate thing, but actually it isn't, because if we explain to our children the whole concept of doing an Ananda Garage, having a wedding, it is centred around Sikhi and having an Ananda Garage, doing the Jar Lama, understanding those Lama, because one thing that couples don't realise is the actual meaning of the Lama and what it actually means, because it's all about parties, it's all about
Okay, let me just throw another
spending
thing
money.
into that. That's all fine. Let's teach our kids what Sikhi is to begin with.
Well, yes.
Do you know what I
No,
mean?
no, I agree.
Parents don't have time to sit down with their kids to
Yeah.
talk about Sikhi. So, you know, that's you know, another conversation that we can have. But going back to the topic and keeping on topic, it's about expense. And I think it's really
Then the
difficult.
expense would have come into it, subject, if they understood what
The
Sikhi
importance,
and an
yeah.
Ananda meant, then they automatically would have
understand
think
the
about
values,
the,
yeah.
But you're fighting against a bigger
materialistic
world
things.
thing.
Do you know what I mean?
But
That
you're
doesn't,
fighting
but that
against
doesn't
the
mean you
bigger
can't make.
world.
That doesn't mean you
Yeah.
can't make your world right.
No, I don't think
Small
so, subject.
changes
You can't
takes a
take
few
on the
people.
whole world.
No,
You can't take
okay,
on the whole
hang
world.
on.
But you can
Children,
start with your
no,
own
you can't, because
family.
when children,
Yes,
when they're
you
growing
can.
up, we want to wear designer trainers. We want this clothes. We want to dress like
Good
this.
for
We
you.
want to
Go
dress
on
like
then and
that.
buy a
And
coat.
that's what parents do.
I wonder if a lot of youngsters have been exposed to go to an Amritdhari wedding because actually they're not
Yeah.
boring. Because actually, what Gurdwaras can do now and Gurdwaras have done now
Take
is
them,
actually
and
really
that's
decorate
fine.
where they're having the langar.
Yeah.
You know, it's done beautifully. There's all the kind of cut cakes and all the beautiful things. You know, so you've got a lot of the things that you would have minus the music and anything else. No, but
There's
actually,
still
it was
an
done
expense,
really beautiful.
But it's still an expense.
But
because
not-
what
but
the
not
Gurdwara-
as expensive.
No, because what the Gurdwara will say to you is, you're paying this amount of money to a hall and we're charging you £1,000 less. The expense is still there.
Well, an average
It's
Indian
much more than
wedding is
£1,000 less.
£30,000 to £50,000.
But going back to that subject, what you just said, some Gurdwara do charge a lot more now for the halls.
But that's what I've said, that you know, you can say Amritdhari weddings still cost exactly the same, because I went to one last year. Amritdhari wedding, in a gurdwara with a marquee, and she said to me, this is how much it cost, and it was no different to a wedding that you go to in a nightclub, or not a nightclub, but in a hotel or whatever. There was no difference.
Do we budget
Yeah.
for weddings,
Yeah,
or do we
yeah.
just go in and just
No,
say,
you budget.
you know,
I mean, what would we
Like
think
our
is a
I'll tell you-
reasonable amount to spend?
Someone phoned me because it's like we've
30,000 is the
organised
average.
quite a lot of weddings
Yeah,
for
it's the average,
families,
isn't
etc., etc.
30,
Someone said
50.
to me, we want to get a lady who does sangeet. So this is on the Thursday. So things are getting extra bigger and bigger and bigger. We want a lady who does sangeet on the Thursday night. We shopped around. The cheapest for a lady to do sangeet was £500
Wow.
for just sangeet. Where there's buddy at home.
You're getting ripped off. I can get some.
you can get a
My mum goes, oh, thank you. I said, Cordy, I got thank you. And I'm like, Mum, I can't believe it. It's just like everyone is, we want Sangeet, and we want the band badge, we want this, and we want that. And it's whoever has marketed the most and
You
got
see,
their
when
business out there.
when my niece got married, was getting married, my Bobby goes, I'm going to get a woman to come, I'm going to get a lady Sangeet group to come. I said, that's fine, because the only people who are going to be at that wedding are going to be your lady Sangeet women,
Yeah.
because we're not coming. Because what are we going to come
What
for?
the buddy ain't coming
What's
to?
the point of us enjoying it? You know, and she cancelled the woman because we weren't going to turn up.
Yeah.
And we said, what are we going to go and do? You know, so at the end of the day,
There's a
yes,
business
I think
idea there.
yeah, it
Another
is.
company,
You know,
so.
100 quid, that's fine. But
We only charge 50.
We'll do it free, won't we? Free.
yeah, but the thing is, I don't think it matters, because if you think about it, you're going to go to the same caterers for the food. You're going to still want to have, you know, everything else. You're going to want to have your, you know, your chocolate fountains and whatever. So the expense is still there. I think everybody thinks, oh, you know, have an Amritari wedding. It isn't. The expense is still the same, because look at everything that goes into
It's
the
the little
wedding.
things that also, like the
It's
photo
all the-
booths they add on
exactly.
now, and
that's
The
right.
album,
You know,
the video, everything else. It's
the
still an
little chart
expense.
stalls and everything that's going on,
Yeah.
and you know, the industry itself, the wedding industry itself, has exploded
I mean,
in terms of services.
it's true.
It's not as simple
Yeah.
As it was before.
Go to the
So
pub
and,
and
you know,
It's
Cook at
quite
home.
interesting.
But whatever-
India, even in India,
God,
the
yeah, have you
price
seen
has
it?
rocketed.
Have you
I mean,
a
people
wedding
are
in
spending
India?
so much
Yeah.
money.
That's because
in
the rise of the
India.
middle classes.
That's right, and people have got
But
more money to
everywhere
spend.
you go, everywhere you go in
Yeah.
India, there's a palace on every single
Yeah,
corner,
yeah,
and they're thinking marriage palace here, marriage palace there. So it's just it's a combination of
business.
things. It's not just the fact that you know, it's keeping up with the Joneses, or we haven't educated our children enough to make other informed choices. It is the case of, wow, so and so had that at the wedding, and when it's my big day, because we're all taught that it's your big day, it's your
It's all about you.
It's all about
Yeah.
you. And then, so on one hand, we want our kids to have everything that we haven't had. On one hand, we want them to think for themselves and do everything best for themselves. But then on the other hand, we're saying, I suppose it's a conversation for the parents and the children.
So we're still really afraid of what, of what other people are going to think if we don't do it. We're going to be different.
Yeah.
And how does it feel to be different?
Yeah.
It feels a bit, fearful, doesn't it, for a lot
But
of
some people
families?
do have small weddings.
Yeah.
And some
And
people
I
have
actually
shunned
think
the...
that's-
And I did.
that's
and
what
I
stands
did
out.
as well. Family, but actually I had a very small wedding because I felt that having so many hundreds of people, you can't manage it, and B, you're not going to see them, and your whole day it
The
just
stress
becomes
as well.
impersonal.
But I think weddings have gone smaller, because nowadays people send wedding invitation cards and they say only 2 people. They actually tell you
Yeah.
you can only bring
Some-
2 people.
some
anyway.
invitations do,
Yeah,
yeah.
some invitations will say
I
only
have had
2.
invitations
Yeah,
where
but then
they-
you know
yeah,
you have
and they want
family
you to
dinner.
RSVP.
Yeah.
RSVP,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or they
But
will
whatever happens-
RSVP for you, and they'll say only 2 people. If you've got an extended family, they only invite, like if you're living with the Rani or Jatania, they will only invite that person and that person's
Yeah.
family. They won't invite the Rani or Jatania, whereas when it was our turn,
Yeah.
it was very different.
School hall.
You know, you had to,
Yeah.
you know, everybody's
Everybody's
invited.
gone, regardless of
Exactly.
guys,
Leisure
yeah.
centres.
Or what they do.
So it has actually cut back in that respect.
Yeah.
There's more friends, more, acquaintances,
Extravagant.
work
There's
colleagues,
more
people like
extravagance,
that.
the more
And the kids are
opulence.
saying, well, you know what, it's our wedding and we want to invite our friends.
Yeah.
We don't want you to invite your mothers, fathers,
Yeah.
friends.
If they're paying for it, if the child is paying for it, and that's what they want to do.
They can do what they like.
Fine.
Yeah.
But even when the parents are paying for it, the kids are saying, why should
But just
you
going
invite
back
them?
to very
This
quickly,
is where we as parents
just
have
going
to say,
back very quickly
listen,
to what
I
Bree
can't
just
afford any more
said,
than this.
that it becomes very impersonal. I actually agree with that, and I think less is more, because if you have got a smaller sort of gathering, you are going to get more out of it because
Yeah.
it's your wedding day, and the focus will be that much more on you.
And you
as
get to
the
spend
bride.
time with your guests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid, for today. As much as, you know, it's a really interesting topic. We can go on forever about this one. But we are going to have to leave it there. So let's do Fateh, and we'll meet again next week.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.